Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this afternoon's webinar with eLife. I am Jennifer McLennan. I'm eLife's Head of External Relations, and I'm with you here today with Mile Plen, Product Manager for eLife, focusing on Libero Publisher, and Paul Shannon, eLife's Head of Technology. We are going to pass the laptop back and forth to avoid any potential technical difficulties. So before I hand the floor over to Mile, I'm just going to offer a quick few remarks about why we're here today. So we'd like to talk about Libero Publisher, which is just one component of the open source end-to-end publishing technology that we've been working on here at eLife. Our hope with the call is to convince you to come forward and let us know what you think about what we're developing and how you think Libero Publisher can be developed to better serve you. So we've got lots and lots of opportunities for you to connect. The things that we're going to cover on today's call include who can use Libero Publisher, whom we think can benefit from it in the first instance, why eLife is building technology for publishing at all, what is Libero Publisher, how is it different, what are we talking about. Then Paul will also cover when and how it will be available, how you can get at it, importantly, how it will be supported and maintained, and then next steps, what you can expect from eLife, and then we'd really like to hear your questions. We have everyone on the call on mute. We've got a great number of people with us today. Thank you very much for coming. What we'll do at the end of the call is I ask you to identify yourselves using the panel on the right-hand side of your screen to raise your hand, and then our colleague Miranda will help us to unmute you individually so that we can hear you and answer your questions. So with that, I'm going to hand the laptop over to Mile.
Hi, everybody. So first, I'm going to talk to you about the future users of Libero Publisher. So Libero Publisher is being built for all kinds of scholarly content providers, from small associations or societies to large publishers. We're also building Libero Publisher for university presses and library-based publishers. So we're first building it for journals, but we have our long-term view is to support monographs. So you won't require a team of skilled developers or skilled staff as well to use Libero Publisher. So the back end of Libero Publisher would be easy to use. So you won't need trained staff, and you also won't need to implement Libero if you want to use service providers, because we are going to build an ecosystem of service providers to help you implement and maintain your instance of Libero Publisher. So why eLife is building a technology for publishing? So eLife is a non-profit organization backed by research founders to drive changes in research communication. So four research founders are backing eLife. So we've got the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, the Wellcome Trust, the Max Planck Institute, and the Knut and Alice Wallenberg Foundation. So we are investing a lot in open source technology and innovation for the benefit of the community. So eLife's mission is helping scientists accelerate discovery by operating a platform for research communication that encourages and recognizes the most responsible behaviors in science. So a publishing infrastructure is a key element of a platform for research communication, and that's the reason why we want to leverage the power of web technology to accelerate research and discovery. So we want to build and maintain a strong and flexible and more responsive community-owned infrastructure for research communication. We also want to support open access publishing, and lowering the cost of publishing infrastructure is a very efficient way to support open access. We also want to help publishers to transition to open access. So, but subscription journals will also be able to use Libero Publisher once we have our access control module built. So we've done some qualitative research. We've talked to different type of organizations, and we're actually still doing some research. And our first conclusions are that there is a strong need for a cost-effective solution, and there is also a need for a more flexible and more modular options. And also there is a desire for modern user experience. So our plan is to build an end-to-end solution. Today we're going to talk about Libero Publisher, which covers the end of the publishing workflow, hosting and publishing. But we're also building a submission and peer review system named Libero Reviewer, also known as XPub. We're building it in collaboration with COCO and Indawi and European C, and other organizations. And we're also building a new production tool in collaboration with Substance. So eLife is already part of an open source community. So through our innovation program, we're helping developers to build their apps, open source apps, and we're helping them financially, but also with design resources. The latest project that we've helped is Plodit. We're also using open source applications such as Elasticsearch and open source project such as Hypothesis. So the way we build software is by building collaboration. So the one for Libero Reviewer, for example, is done with COCO and Hindawi and other organizations. And we are building Libero Reviewers using existing components from the Pub suite, a suite of modules that was developed by COCO. We're also going to we started this new collaboration as well with Substance and other organizations. So this time we're using Texture, which is an authoring tool, to build a QC and typesetting tool for our production team. So again, we are building a new product on top of existing modules and components. So as you can see, we're promoting this behavior in science, and we promote this behavior in science, so building on top of each other. And this is what we're doing as well with our open source projects. With Libero Publisher, it's quite different. It's a quite different approach, because this time we're going to use components that we've already built for our Continuum platform. So we're going to reuse them, and we're going to share them with this new collaboration. So this way of building, developing software is very different from the traditional software industry. It's more about building connections with organizations and collaborating. It's a very interesting and refreshing way to build software.
Okay, thank you, Miles. Hi, I'm Paul. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about what Libero Publisher actually is, and show you a little bit of it as well. But let's start by thinking a little around how we got here. So we're trying to come up with a fresh way to approach content delivery for scholarly publishers, and we're doing this through, as Miles suggested, lots of different components that build together to produce a system like Libero. It's been an evolution of the architecture and the software that powers eLife currently, but we're building it from the ground up because we want it to serve more publishers, which means quite a different approach to how data models fit together, how different components fit together, and all the reuse that we want in an open source sense. We're also having service providers in mind, so improving the developer experience and the ability to be able to host this easily and at low cost for people, providing multiple hosting solutions from one provider. But the most important part is that it's very much a community-driven development effort. So we've been working with lots of different publishers, lots of different service providers, other people involved in the industry, learning from what we've been working on with the work around Libero Review with the Cocoa community, so that we can build something that really is flexible and adaptable and works for lots of different people's needs. So looking here, we've got two shots of our design that our UX team have built, and as you can see, it looks a lot like the eLife look and feel. This is because we've spent a lot of time doing user research. We have a lot of evidence-based design in this, and we think this is the best way to present scholarly content. So on the left there, we've got a homepage which has basic lists of the various categories that you might want to go to, list of the latest articles and the issues on the right there. And then in the screenshot on the right, we've got an article broken down into sections, trying to keep the site furniture and all the additional parts of the design away, so that it's content first. Content is prioritized over other parts of the article, and it's nice and clear for people to get to the content that they need. We've also taken time to consider the production teams and the staff within publishers who need to monitor and look at what's going on behind the scenes as things are published. You can see here two shots from the dashboard that we've designed that we'll be building shortly. On the left there, a list of all the articles and their current state. You can see when things are ready to be published and when they're actually being published. This includes items that you can set the publish date and publish things in the future and check on the status of a single article, and that's shown there in the right hand side, where you can see all the various steps that article has been through, as well as seeing a preview of its header, and then that will also link to a preview version of the journal itself, of the publishing side of Libero, so you'll be able to check articles before they're published. So a very basic, lightweight workflow. This reuses the same design patterns that we developed for eLife, but also this pattern library within inside Libero is used across the dashboard and the publishing side. There's lots of reuse going on there. So if you need to change the typeface or change colors to match your own look and feel, that's reflected across all of the platform. And in fact, these dashboard designs are also compatible with our other products like Libero Producer and Libero Reviewer. So taking a little look at how far we've managed to progress so far. We've had our whole team working on this for a few months now, and we've managed to get to a position where we can bring most of the article together. So you can see here that we've got a mobile view of the platform on the right, and that's the equivalent on the left there. We've produced everything from the front end in what's called a pattern library. So these are small atoms and molecules of content, of design content, if you like, that bring a page together. So abstract is an example, and a digest is an example, the title an example on there. And then on that page, you can see how they're all brought together in a big page. So these individually reusable, individually stylable content pieces can be assembled to create a page however you like. So we've got, so far with that, that's all now available on the web if you follow the links that we'll talk about later. And then this is an example of a popular eLife article displayed in Libero. So you can see, looks very much like the eLife article, but stripped back a little bit, so that this is taking into account the fact that Libero is built for multiple publishers, easy to share the data model between different journals and different types of content that people want to be able to reuse. So one of the fundamental differences between the system that we built to power eLife and this system, as well as having consideration for multiple publishers, is also multiple languages. And even in this case, as you can see with the examples on screen now, multiple language text directions as well. So we noticed this was a thing that's been needed in the market. Lots of smaller publishers like to produce content in their local languages, and eLife saw this as a interesting aspect to pursue further. So we talked to lots of different publishers who have this need, and found that actually there are a few different ways that multi-language content needs to be represented in a journal. One where the title or the abstract is multiple languages, but actually the rest of the content is a single language, and we support that. one where you can have multiple languages for the whole file, and ones where you have sort of a mixture where just the title or just parts of the content in different languages. So that's meant that we've had to fundamentally rethink the way that these patterns are made, that our data models are structured, and the way that the application works, which is why we call this an evolution of the architecture of the system that powers eLife. And finally, this is a small example of the consideration we've gone to. So these are lists of these could be tags or keywords or subject areas or whatever, and you can see as those different languages are put in there, even use a different separated types that are native to that type of language. So it really does consider the way that lots of different people want to publish things in lots of different ways. Okay, so just having a look at the various parts of Libero Publisher. So I've already mentioned the pattern library, and that is the place that holds all the styles for different content, and that is consumed, if you like, by the browser web app, which is the thing that displays the articles, and the dashboard, which we saw screenshots of. All of these get their content from an API. An API stands for Application Programming Interface, and what that does is provides a machine-readable form of all the content that we'll need. That means that that's also available for other machine-readable tasks, rather than just the browser itself. If you wanted to attach them to machine learning tools and all sorts of things like this, and you can consume that content in lots of different formats as well. So we'll provide a basic browser app as part of Libero Publisher, and then that can be extended or expanded in ways to meet your needs. The articles themselves are all stored in an article store, and then we have a search engine that lets you search content, but also provides listings of things that will be listed either by date for things like the homepage or by subject area for pages that do that sort of thing. And then all of this is backed by an event bus. This is basically a queue of everything that happens within the system, and this is a great place for other existing systems to hook into. For example, one of our partners has been looking at using Libero Publisher and hooking their plagiarism detector and also their existing indexing services into Libero, and this is how they can do that using the event bus. Everything that happens in the system will fire an event, and other applications can just listen in. And that's basically the architecture of how we know how to put things into search and how to send things up to the FTP depositor that you see there on the right, that sends things down to other services like Crossref and other indexes and so on. And then up on the top left, you can see the various inputs. Everything into Libero goes via the API, whether that's an article ingester where content comes from your content typesetting service, or whether it's from an external CMS system. All these things can be represented and injected into Libero, so you have multiple types of content all listed and searchable together. Okay, just hand you back to Mile now, who's going to talk a little bit about when and how you can use Libero Publisher.
So when and how you can use Libero Publisher. So we are planning to go live with a demo journal around May, June, and this demo journal will be using our first version of Libero Publisher, and the code of this version will be available on GitHub. So once this is live, we're going to continue building new functionalities, and as soon as they are ready, we are going to make them available to the community. And you can expect as well multiple stream of development. So our partners, for example, in their way, will start building new functionalities as well, and we could imagine as well more organizations starting to build new functionalities around the same time. So how can you watch progress as it happens? So we have a roadmap on Trello. You can see the high-level requirements from there. And we're also using GitHub for the tickets, so you can see the detailed requirements on this platform. So here is an example of the Trello board that we're using. So the column in the middle represents the requirements for the first version of Libero Publisher. So if you click on one of these cards, it will open a pop-up, and you will be able to see the more details if you click on the GitHub link. So each card represents a milestone, and when the detailed requirements for each milestones are ready, we will add a link to GitHub. So on GitHub, you can see, for example, this is the page of the milestone. You can see all the tickets that are associated to this milestone. In that example, it's half complete. You can see the green progress bar, and we've got 3 tickets that are open and 3 that are closed. So most of these tickets are quite technical, and you will need some background in development to understand them, but some of them can be understood by anybody. So these tickets have a different label. They are purple, and it says feature ticket. So they describe a functionality that can be viewed by the end user. So feel free to look at these tickets and to comment as well. All these tickets are public. We also have a board which shows the progress done on Libero, but from a detailed point of view. So how do we decide which feature is built? So we get input from publishers. We've talked to different type of publishers and small and bigger societies, and we're always looking for new suggestions. So please feel free to email us at hello@libero.pub to email your suggestions, or if you want to give us some feedback as well. So we're going to run some user tests as well. So if you want to volunteer and if you want to see some functionalities before they are public, please let us know. You don't need to even if you're not planning to use Libero, feel free to give us some feedback. It's always useful. So how can you get Libero Publisher? So there are 2 different options. The first one is you have a team of developers, then you can go on GitHub and start using the components that are available. And the second option, which will be available later this year, will be for you to contact service providers that we are going to recruit, and this service provider will do the implementation and also the customization for you. So here is how the service provider model looks like. So content providers will contact the service providers as we have selected, and these service providers will do the implementation and, if needed, the customization of a Libero Publisher. They will also, if needed, they will also maintain your instance, and the Libero community will maintain the code base. So this model is working. It's already used by some open source solutions such as Moodle, which is a software used by universities. So we know that content migration could be painful and transition in general. So we're going to make sure that service providers are experienced in content migration. We're also going to make sure that they can adapt Libero Publisher to your workflow and do other customizations. And finally, we were going to make sure that they can deliver some high quality customer service. So the community-owned approach has many benefits. And the first one is it's more future-proof. So you don't depend on one organization. So you don't depend on one contributor, for example, like eLife. And also you don't depend on one service provider if you used one. So for example, let's say you've used a service provider to implement the Libero Publisher, and this service provider disappears. You can decide to go to use another service provider, or you could even decide to build your team of developers or hire a developer. And the main difference is that you own your instance. So, for example, with this open source community-owned approach, you still own your open source infrastructure, and you can decide to use a different service provider. So we can say that the instance of the platform belongs to you. So in the end, you get the best of both worlds. So you can adapt your code. You get a lot of help, technical help from service providers, and you also benefit from the community updates on the code base. So, for example, let's say that something similar to the GDPR comes up, and we have to adapt the software to the new legislation. The community would build a new extension or a new plugin to support these changes, and the same for security. If security standards are evolving, the community will update the code base. So now I'm going to hand over to Paul.
Thank you, Miles. So following on what Miles been saying around how the community-owned approach works, I want to talk a little bit more about how that has governance and how the actual community works to support this type of thing. So the simplest thing to show around how accessible all of Libero is that you can access the code right now. Although the system's not up to a sort of fully functioning level, you can certainly download it, inspect the code, run it. We have a deployed version running, which is where I took a lot of the screenshots that I showed you earlier. So you can start looking at that now, and also if you want to get involved with the community by opening an issue in a very sort of open source way using the GitHub link there. We also have Libero.pub, which at the moment details a lot of our governance model, which I'm going to talk about shortly. But we're also going to expand on that with new guides and step-by-step instructions on how to get going and where things are progressing, and that's in development at the moment. So I always think with open source software, getting people to look at the code early is a very good thing. We're also very open around how we make decisions and the direction that we're going, which is the things that Miles has been talking about already. So looking at the governance model, so eLife are following a model where it takes eLife are given the role of the project lead, but we're supported by a steering committee and a number of special interest groups. So the special interest group, for instance, around technology that ensures that we're making the best decisions around technologies to use, and one around product that ensures we're making the best decisions in the direction the product's taking. By having this steering committee means that although eLife are leading the project and can make decisions themselves about the direction that we're taking, that we're always held to account by these other organisations, and they can ensure that we're not building something that's specifically for eLife that only works for a certain type of journal, and ensure it works for people like service providers, smaller journals, larger journals, and all sorts of different types of users. This was all decided when we had a community sprint held here in August last year. And one of the things that came out of that discussion is that the people involved wanted the protection of the code base, if you like, while also giving it enough freedom so that other people couldn't come and take parts of code or patent it or hide things away, so that others in the community couldn't use them, and so that everyone that was working together could ensure that they were pushing things forward together in the right direction, yet someone was still held accountable for ensuring this whole thing continued, and that's the role that eLife takes on within our governance model. And to facilitate that, we've licensed our software using the MIT license. It's one of the most permissive free open source software licenses, and that means that even if you've got a copy of the code running on your machine somewhere, then you can then use that as you would like with no restrictions. So even if we took away the code or it disappeared for some reason or eLife ceased to exist, then that code is still out there for people to use and have no comeback for an organisation to run it for you. So there's no risk in anything ever disappearing. The same goes for the documentation as well. That's all available in the Creative Commons, so people can expand that. One of the extra protections we put in was a contributor license agreement. What this says is that anyone that makes changes to the code and submits them back to the main code base has to agree that they will never ask for royalties or license fees based on any patents that are involved in that type of code. It's all patent free for everyone to use. It also assigns the copyright over to eLife so that people can't then, in some years' time or some months' time, take away their intellectual property against that code and try and lock it down or make it proprietary, so that the code that's contributed by anyone always remains free. But also, conversely to that, it also says that eLife aren't allowed to change any of the licensing to anything that's not an open source license. So there's no way that the code could suddenly become proprietary or be owned by eLife. And it also includes a nice clause that works very much like the Creative Commons attribution license, where any changes that people submit to eLife, we always have to say that they did it, and it maintains that in the code base, so everyone can always see the great contributions that the whole community is making. But it means that the code it cannot be acquired, it can't be changed into a proprietary license, and it'll be free and open to use for everyone. So the maintenance of the code base will primarily be maintained by eLife and the community. So right now we've got 3 other organisations joined us in sort of a commitment to the project. They signed a memorandum of understanding with us late last year. That's the Coco Foundation, Digerati, who are a service provider and software provider, and Hindawi Limited, who are another publisher who are very passionate about open infrastructure. So they have joined with us, and they're part of the steering group, and ensure that the code is easily maintained and updates are made, and anything that they add for their use cases is contributed back into the main set of the code base for the rest of the world to use. And we're hoping that this year there's going to be at least 2 organisations using Libero Publisher, one small journal and one larger sort of publishing provider, who's looking at running it in a multi-tenant version with the CMS attached. So there's lots of scope already for people planning this into their year's budget to get this working. Although eLife are planning to use it to run eLife the journal, we built the code for the platform for the software that runs the journal right now in a way that means that actually the maintenance isn't too tricky for us. So we're able to spend our time building Libero Publisher, evolving that architecture, reusing what we've learned and what we've tested out there, and eventually we'll move eLife over to it in the future. But we want to make sure that we can spend time making this a community effort to begin with. But at least we have in mind that something as complex and as broad as eLife can be run on Libero Publisher in the future. In terms of support, as all great open source software projects there's always support available through a chat channel. We use the Libero community Slack for that, or just by raising issues on GitHub, which our team maintain and the community keep an eye on as well. So there's always help at hand to know more and to get things working. But then we also grow in an ecosystem of service providers, as Miles mentioned, and they're able to offer technical support alongside support from our own people as well. And one of the interesting things we've been looking at more recently is service level agreements, where we're able to provide people with a known sort of guaranteed bug fix and security update turnaround time, so that either service providers or people that need that reassurance and that risk mitigated for the way that they work can easily obtain something like that from us, so that they can rest assured that any security updates or leaks or anything like that happened in either the software or the libraries that it uses can easily be updated and passed on and updated in the code base before they become an issue. So that's a nice sort of addition to open source software there that makes it a lot more like the proprietary software world. Okay, so with that, I'll just hand you back to Jennifer, who's going to talk to us about the next steps.
Great. Thanks very much, Paul. So as a result of this call, we are hoping that you will both contribute to the development of Libero Publisher and the community, and also learn more about what's happening. So to contribute, we want you to connect with us. So if you email hello@libero.pub, you'll connect with Mile and myself, and we can make sure that you're in the loop on all the updates, including the release of the demo journal, so you can provide feedback on that. We can contact you when we need to do user testing and all types of things along those lines. To best inform your feedback, if you have a chance to take a look at the roadmap, so you have a sense of what we've developed and what we already have in mind, and then you can make your suggestions off the back of that. And as Paul said, the community on Slack is quite active and organized, so you're very welcome to connect with us there. To learn more off of what we've talked about today, the website, Libero.pub, is available to you, and we'll be expanding that resource over the next coming months. We do have a newsletter that comes out every 2 months with some of the headlines in our technology and innovation developments. And then again, as Paul said, if you want to just plunk in there and explore the code, you can do so on GitHub today. From our side, what you can expect is a really big announcement when the demo release is available in the next few months. Also, there was a question about learning more about Libero Reviewer. You can expect a really big announcement about the first release of that this week. So do tune in to eLife, and we will gather your feedback through all of these channels on how to build Libero into a resource to best support you. Now, we'd like to open it up to questions, hear what you guys think about our update to you. Again, in the side of your screen, you have a panel and hopefully a mechanism to raise your hand. If you can raise your hand, we will unmute your line and take your question. Miranda, could you guide us through? Is there anyone raising their hands at the moment?
So we've got a question in via text that I could answer. So this is from Nathan Wright, and he asked, can you give an overview of the tech stack required to run the publisher module?
Oh,
so yeah, that was
right in with the difficult questions.
Yeah. So that was something that I considered covering earlier on, but since it's the demand, so basically we use PHP for the front end and the browser parts of the application and the APIs, and then for the more data-driven parts at the bottom, the things that of that diagram that we saw, we use Python for that. That all runs inside containers, and we use Docker for that, and then use a mixture of Terraform and various scripts and things to have a continuous delivery, continuous deployment environment. So the screenshots I showed you earlier from our environment called the unstable environment, the reason we call it that is that every single line of code that we change, as soon as it's committed to the repository, it gets built and deployed to that environment so that we can see it straight away. So we have a nice set of continuous delivery scripts all set up using Docker running on Kubernetes, the latest in sort of cloud hosting technologies. I think that's probably that question covered.
Are those open source technologies you just named?
Yeah, so everything we use is open source, and yeah, we've even contributed back to a few of those certainly some of the libraries in those areas to enhance Libero in different ways as well.
Great. So we've had lots of questions on chat, which might be helpful to go through so everyone can hear the questions and answers. But Paul, if I can throw one at you, you showed us some beautiful layouts of the journal and articles early on. They're all very eLife-y. If I'm not eLife, can I change them to look more like me?
Absolutely. So I talked earlier about the pattern library where everything's split into smaller parts. One of the things we've kind of abstracted away from that is to make a very easy to use configuration page. Well, configuration script is not really a page. I don't want to make it sound like we've got a mouse-driven thing, but a basic set of web skills. Someone that's used to building websites can easily change probably about 10 to 15 different variables, which change the various colors, the font weights, the grid widths, the sizes, and so on. So within a few minutes, in fact, you can easily change that sort of stuff and make it a lot more like your own sites or a new branding or anything else that you're trying to produce. So what we've set up is the grid layout and the way that the text folds as you make the window smaller, or if you move to a mobile device or something like that. And that's all based on a lot of theory and research that we've done. But actually changing the typeface, the colors and so on, fitting around that grid means you get the best of both worlds. You get the user research driven stuff that we've done, but also get to add your own branding and colors in. And trying to optimize that process in rebranding and changing the way that things look slightly is something that we're working with service providers to do, so they can offer something really quick and efficient.
I'm onto the chat now. So again, you can raise your hand or go ahead and ask a question in the box. But Paul, are we able to name the two publishers who are going to be using Libero Publisher within the year?
I think so. So one of them is one of our community partners, Hindawi Limited. They're currently developing a content management system that they're going to use instead of the browser web app in Libero, and the idea of that is that they can migrate easily from their existing system. So they're going to move over one piece at a time, and the architecture that I described will really help them do that, and that's one of the reasons why we've architected it that way. The other one is a small economics-based journal, the International Journal of Microsimulation. So right now their journal is quite manually created using sort of very basic web techniques, and all of their articles and issues are issued just as PDFs. They're seeing this as an opportunity to leapfrog all the existing technology and service providers and get in with this modern and this new, fresh approach. So they've been working with us since the early days. We met them at a COCO community event, and they're hoping to launch soon after we've got our demo available, as the demo is based on the features that someone of that size would need.
Great. So Mile, you've on behalf of eLife, you've been interviewing publishers of different colors and shapes and sizes to learn more about how we might help them. So I want to ask you on behalf of Reme Malero, if you can say why someone should use Libero Publisher rather than another digital journal management system.
So Libero Publisher first is it's a community-owned software. So you benefit from new functionalities built by many different organizations, and it's also more modular. So it will be easier for a service provider to adapt Libero Publisher to your workflow, and it's going to use as well more modern standards, and it's also going to be part of an end-to-end suite of software.
Great, thank you. All right, I'm going to take this one. Jason is asking, what's the business model for eLife? Since we're publicly funded, are we not interested in making money on this, but providing a tool for others to use? So to clarify, eLife is a nonprofit organization. We're not funded by any public organizations, but we are funded by three private biomedical research funders. Max Planck isn't perfectly private, but mostly. So we're not interested in making money per se. No, our ambition, our mission is to develop a tool that is primarily of use and a benefit to the rest of the community. Now, as a nonprofit organization, it remains a challenge and opportunity for us to build a model for financial sustainability, and we hope that our technology development and our ability to provide development support to other organizations will fit into our revenue mix in the longer term. Another one. Miranda, any hands?
No hands.
All right, grab me if there are any. So another question for Vic, from Vic about the email address. So that's a good point. I'm just going to put that up on the screen.
I can send it in the chat box.
Yeah, great. Thank you. All right, so the email address is on screen. If you'd like to get in touch with us, please do. Paul, question for you from Philippe. Libero relies on texture. Is DAR the expected input to Libero?
So that's interesting. Yeah. So DAR is a format that packages up a basic article and any other files that you need in order to be able to edit an article in the texture XML editor. So for those who don't know, texture is one of the tools that we support. It's a WYSIWYG editor, a bit like Microsoft Word, but it produces JATS XML in the background, so that it simplifies the publishing process from that point of view. So the DAR format, the article that's defined inside there, is a cut-down version of a JATS article. And Libero will also provide a cut-down version of a JATS article, which is very similar. So it doesn't require the DAR format, but it is something that's very compatible with it. The reason that we're not sticking to the DAR format is that was designed with a slightly different purpose, with authoring in mind, whereas we are looking at people that have a lot of content already authored and converted. So if you look at the community pages on our GitHub repo, you'll see there's been a request for comments for the community to contribute to recently around our first data model that we're going to incorporate into Libero Publisher to be JAX based, and it is based on a cut down version just like DAR.
Thanks. Paul, could you say a little bit more about how the SLA aspect of the ecosystem will work?
So we put this in place for perhaps the two customers of it might be service providers who want to make sure that anything that happens to the libraries or any issues with the software quickly get fixed, but also for any sort of larger publishers who have their own tech teams that want the reassurance that when they're relying on this software, that there's someone there that they can, call up or send support requests to, and they can have a guaranteed turnaround time. So we've not come up with exact turnaround times for this sort of thing, but you can expect a sort of matrix of the number of hours or days that something of a certain severity will get turned around in, and our team will be on standby to fix that sort of thing. So and then that will attract a fee from those people, and as Jen mentioned, the ways that we can generate revenue for this for eLife and to support the ongoing maintenance of the community. SLAs are one of those things. So.
Thanks. All right, moving down the list. Our next question is whether Libero Publisher is purely a journal publishing platform, or also if it fits in the space of recent publishing platforms like HRB Open Research, meaning are we planning to support continuous publication, open peer review, non-traditional research outputs, etc. So shall I take a run?
Yes.
Libero Publisher is a publishing platform, period. So we will use it in the longer term to support eLife publishing operation, but it is not at the moment intended to support other editorial processes. So no, I'm not saying that right. Please go ahead.
So because we know that the landscape of scholarly communication is always changing, we've built it in a way that it's modular enough and adaptable enough that when these changes come about or people want to experiment with these things, or actually that's what they're doing, they're able to build these modules in place. So although right now we're concentrating, because we've got to pick something first, on journal publication post-peer review, and there's absolutely no reason why someone couldn't take this and turn it into a preprint server, layer on something like Hypothesis as an annotation tool, add in peer review, post-publication peer review onto that, and so on and so on. So because of the architecture, that really helps you hook into different things. And because it's all open source and you effectively can take the code and add to it as you like, it is open to all of those possibilities. And that's something we've always borne in mind as we've been building it and architecting it.
Much more aptly put. Okay, next one. Could the software run so that journals are published within an already existing specialist interest website, or would they need an independent journal web page to publish?
So yeah, that's one of the things that Hindawi were considering. So you could strip out some of the HTML that makes like the outside of the page, if you like, so that all you get back is the HTML that generates the article, and you could embed that in another web page quite easily. Because everything is served via an API, you just connect to that from your existing website and just consume the content and use that, whatever system that other website is built in, to render that content, and then reuse the patterns that we provide to ensure that it looks consistent with other Libero installations. Or in fact, you could just match the branding and have a different URL that hit the two. So there's a few different options. When eLife first started, one of the options that we had was we took content and we injected it into a CMS, Drupal CMS. So that's also an option as well. You could just take that content as an output. You could hook it into that event bus and bring that into the existing website. So again, we try to make things what we call in software loosely coupled. So you're not fixed to use every single part, but if you do want to use every single part, it's already there for you.
Great. One more. What is eLife's success metric with Libero Publisher?
So to begin with our demo, we presented our hypothesis, haven't we? We've got a hypothesis on the on our minimum viable product, which is that a simple small journal can take our MVP and publish with it. that a larger journal, something like eLife or something as complex as that, will be able to build on that to produce their platform, and that we make attempts to lower the cost of publishing. So those are very early things that we're looking at. For us, I think, because of the way that we're mission-driven, the increasing collaborations, the growing of the community, the fact that we'll have other people being influenced by some of the research and the technology that we've built, but also having smaller organisations that haven't been able to publish before are able to publish in a cost-effective way are some of the areas we've been looking at. I don't think we've got any actual number or metric in mind right now, but that's something that we're always looking to develop. That's a lot of how eLife are driven by data and numbers and things that we want to achieve.
We do also have an ambition to make more of the core infrastructure for publishing open source, openly available, so people can use it and then turn their attention to innovation and technology innovation to be able to do more with the research. So if as a collective, as a community, we're spending less time, redoing the infrastructure and making sure it stands up and adding new components to it, we're all just using the same infrastructure. We can then focus that energy, creativity, and development time on new things, new ways to interrogate the data, and take them forward. All right, we've got a couple more in the chat that came up earlier. I think they're worth just putting on the table so everyone who's still here can hear them. So a quick one, Paul, is about the API documentation. Have we got any?
Right, yeah, so the schema around how the API works is available now. That's in one of I think the repo is called schemas on GitHub, which you can go and inspect and see how that works. There's examples of how that works within, we've got a dummy API, which is what we use for testing, and also if you look inside some of the other repositories, you can see example articles in there as well. So you can see how that schema is utilized and how it's in development. At the moment, we're just at the stage where we're developing this minimal article format, as I spoke about earlier. And once that's available or been locked down, we'll start publishing that and talking about that a little bit more as well. We'll mention that in the Slack channel and so on. And that will be a good example of how you can get an article from an existing system into Libero Publisher. But when we launch the demo, we'll be launching an accompanying documentation site and a product site that goes with it, and that's where we'll put guides and things like that as well, where we'll start talking in a bit more friendly terms around schemas. But right now, if you really care about the technical side of it, you can find that information.
Laura's asking now if you can estimate the cost of service provision for a simple, small journal, both in terms of setup and annual maintenance.
So that's not an easy thing to estimate, and which is why we don't try to attempt it. However, we did produce a blog post a few months ago, actually maybe even a year ago now, which looked at eLife's costs running Continuum, which is what the Libero was called before we took on this community developed effort. So in that, there's a calculator that looks at three aspects of your journal. One is the amount of content that you publish. One is the amount of and the number of visitors that you have in any given month, and the other is the amount of redundancy that you have. Like for instance, eLife run on 3 sets of servers, so that if anything goes wrong with one, it still stays up at night, so we can all have a nice good sleep, and then and no one misses out on our content. So moving those 3 variables around lets you try and estimate what the cost might be. I can tell you now, for running a production instance of eLife using our older software, it's around $1,700 a month. So you can imagine that's quite a large stack. We have a very redundant setup, something like 50 servers running. So we're trying to architect, or we are architecting Libero Publisher for that matter, so they can be run on just one server. And one server in any cloud provider, because it uses Docker containers, which can be used in any cloud provider. So looking at an AWS cost of that, you're talking a few, probably in the tens of dollars a month just for the hardware costs, and then service provision on top. You need to pay people's time to make sure it's up and running and it's working and so on, which is something that I think we're going to hope to work with our ecosystem of providers to come together to produce a decent figure on, I think. But it's always going to be trying to drive down the cost of this. One of the interesting things that a lot of people in the sort of technology world talk about is scale. So scaling up So everyone thinks they're going to be really successful and scale their system up to a huge amount of traffic and really interesting articles. But actually, majority of the time, you won't have those traffic spikes. So Libero is designed to be able to scale right down so you can run it on a small amount of servers with not many people looking after it, so that it is really cheap to run. So fortunately, I can't give you an exact figure, but it's easy to kind of gather the information we do have to try and to estimate something. But that is something we'll be working on, where we'll get price lists and an ecosystem so you can choose what sort of level of service you need.
That last point is a really good one. It really helped me to understand a little bit more the importance and the advantage of modernizing some of the technology behind publishing. So, Paul, the way you explained it to me was that, we used to have to block space and bandwidth in advance, block it in a month in advance, a day in advance. And now we can get down to like the millisecond and then change it regularly, so we're only paying for what we use rather than what we think we need.
Yeah, and that's all because it's built on cloud provided technology. It's what we call cloud native application, which is because we're building it in more modern times, means we can take advantage of this type of stuff.
So, Mile, question for you. What will be the main difference between Libero Publisher and existing software like OJS, Open Journal Systems?
So I think the main difference would be that Libero Publisher will be using more modern standards, and it will support like HTML articles, which means that your content will be indexed on Google Scholar and Google as well. And so and there are other differences, but that would be the main one.
Yeah, in terms of the architecture against OJS, Libero Publisher is a lot more modular, so you don't have to use all of it. Whereas the OJS, you have to install all of it and run all of it, although it's reasonably simple to do. Libero Publisher will let you integrate with existing systems and adapt and unuse the parts you need a bit more, which is why it's slightly different to OJS, but still very similar in a lot of aspects as well.
Yeah. Another difference is the user experience and the UI, which will be a bit more modern as well.
Heather, can you please restate your question, because I don't follow exactly. And just to follow up on OJS, they're a partner in many projects, aren't they? Texture and substance-related things, and the Substance Consortium. So we're really curious to know how that partnership might extend through the workflow. So looking forward to having more conversations with them.
Yeah, there's certainly parts of Libero and some of the stuff that we've had the privilege to be able to do, like the user experience design and so on, that their team haven't had so many people around to help them with, where we're able to share ideas and so on.
Yeah, the user experience design is a really good individual example of how the funder investment can benefit you, can benefit other publishers. We've spent the money on doing all the testing and doing all the design, and now those patterns are openly available for you to adapt. So please do take advantage. They have been tested. I'll get just a comment here from Vic saying that he bets that Libero as a service would be a very welcome product for many small publishers and journals not interested in shopping for developers to do it for them. So, that's the idea, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that's a big part of what we do in the technology team is improve the developer experience, one, for us, so that our lives are easier and it's nice and easy to build on, so that people can download it if they have got teams, but actually so that these service providers can really make a great product that lots of people can use really easily, and we get a big ecosystem of them, so everyone's got a choice, whether that's by geography or specialism or redundancy levels or whatever it is that they want to focus on.
So, Paul, back to Heather at Hypothesis. Heather, we've got this blog. We can send it to you, but maybe you can remember what you wrote and what you just said a second ago, Paul. So you said that there were three parts of cost. One, the amount of documents.
Yeah.
Second, something. And third, the amount of redundancy. Was the middle one the cost of AWS?
No, it's the number of visitors. Yeah. So this is basically how I have to try and cost out how much eLife's going to cost. When we look at our budgeting and so on. So we occasionally get spikes of traffic for really popular content, but there's a baseline of traffic that we get that we hope grows over the months. And then the amount of content we have drives the amount of processing that's needed to put content through, but also the amount of traffic that we get. So they're kind of interlinked. And traffic, the reason traffic's important is because you have to pay for bandwidth, and certainly if you're using a content delivery network, which will cache all your content around the globe. We do that, and they charge us per gigabyte for the amount of content consumed. One of the interesting things about Libero is that the content is very minimal. We saw that there wasn't any site furniture, extra additional images and adverts and scripts being downloaded as you get on some websites. So the bandwidth charges are a lot lower as a result, because content is delivered quickly, because we're trying to get the content to the user as quickly as possible. So that reduces that aspect of it. But certainly, the difference between 50 visitors a month and 1 million visitors a month will have an idea of your cost. And then, redundancy. You can run it on one server, and if it disappears, then you have to ring someone up and get it running again. Or like eLife do, you can run it on 3. So if one disappears, you've still got 2 going until someone wakes up in the morning and switches the third one back on again.
Thanks. Okay, we had better wrap up there. So if you guys have any closing comments before I say thank you and goodbye?
No, just please do join in on the Slack channel on GitHub and get involved. Like we're always putting out anything from technical to publishing decisions and roadmap decisions on what we're making, and your input's always welcomed. More thoughts and more ideas, the better, I think.
Yeah. And I was going to add, contributing to an open source project is not just contributing with code. As Paul just said, it could be as well with just feedback and comments, and that's helping us as well.
Super. Thanks very much to you both. Thanks to everyone who's joined us today. We're still here. If you have any questions, comments, feedback for us, please go ahead and email us at hello@libero.pub. We will have other similar events in future. There are lots of other ways to connect with us, and we hope that you will. Thanks very much, and talk to you soon.